Hello, Buckeye Nation. Welcome to our wrap-up of National Signing Day here at Men in Scarlet and Gray Live. I'm joined with the Chip Minnick, who you can follow at Chip Minnick on Twitter. How you doing today, Chip?
I'm doing well. How are you, Shannon?
I'm doing good, thank you. Also here, the one, the only troll expert, Jeremiah, who you can follow at on Twitter at SYRMOTSAG. How you doing today, Jeremiah?
Wonderful. How are you today? Wonderful.
All right. As you know, today was a big day with national signing and everything, so I will let our two best experts here discuss everything that went on. So, Jeremiah, if you want to go ahead and start it off, go ahead.
Yeah, I thought the class that Urban Meyer put together this year was an outstanding one. Probably not as top-heavy as some of his previous classes have been. This one has a lot more what you may call meat to it. He filled up a lot of offensive line, defensive line. Not a lot of playmakers looking at it right off the bat, but that doesn't mean he doesn't have any playmakers. It's a huge class, 27 members. I think every Michigan in the world has mentioned that by now, that Ohio State has oversigned. You can look at it in a few ways. It's a top 10 class. So that's another, notch in Urban Meyer's belt.
What are your thoughts today, Chip?
Well, to kind of piggyback off what Jeremiah just said, 27 players. It's a large class. In terms of kind of breaking it down, from a different perspective, like Jeremiah said. Obviously, I'm thrilled with, and we'll talk about it in greater detail. I'm thrilled with the fact that there was such an emphasis on linemen, on the offensive side. For example, just to kind of compare and contrast from previous recruiting classes. 5 years ago, the 2010 recruiting class, Andrew Norwell was the only offensive lineman that Ohio State recruited that year. I mean, just one. And you compare and contrast that with bringing in 6 offensive linemen. I just think that, that's a brilliant move by Coach Meyer for the long term. Looking at the class geographically, out of 27 players, they had 12 players from the state of Ohio, 3 from Florida, 2 from Michigan, 2 from Virginia, and they had 1 each from Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, New Jersey, South Dakota, and Utah. 4 of the players have already enrolled and are actually participating in winter conditioning and will be participating in spring ball. Those are Jamel Dean, Grant Schmidt. I want to say, let's see here. I'm trying to think who else are the others that have already signed up and are on campus. Nick Connor and J. Sean Parnell. So you've got some players that are already going to possibly be able to possibly make a move on the depth chart. As Jeremiah said, it's a top 10 class. I don't really get into the particulars of this, for example, like I think one of the sites had them as, number 4. Somebody else had them at number 9. I mean, point is, I kind of look at it, it's like, all right, if you're signing talented guys that just about could go to play for just about any top program in the country, you're on the right track. So I'm very, very happy with the recruiting class. It's obviously it's going to take. You don't really know what you have until a couple years in, But when you look at a couple years ago, the 2013 class, how instrumental they were in the national championship run, you definitely can't understate the value of doing not only a good job in recruiting, but player development, and that's where Urban Meyer and the coaching staff have excelled in both areas.
Now, touching on something that Jeremiah said as far as the word out there of oversigning, number one, Ohio State this is the first year that they're finally back up to 85 scholarships, correct?
That is correct.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's kind of weird that, Tattoo Gate and we're back up to 85, and, Penn State with their 409 problems and they're back up to their 85, but I'll digress on that. Also, there's word coming out today that there's a couple of players that might be done for their careers.
Yes, right before the podcast began, and this was on Twitter, and I haven't actually seen it, but there was something mentioned about Armani Reeves, who came in with the 2012 recruiting class, and I guess he has had an issue with concussions, as well as Devon Bogard, who also came in the 2012 recruiting class. He unfortunately has suffered some ACL injuries over the last few seasons. So Devon Bogard for sure. Armani Reeves may be done. Ron Tanner is another name that I believe Coach Meyer mentioned. And then there were, it was right around, I think around the time of the national championship that word came out that Trey Johnson, who was a linebacker, he signed last, actually in 2013, but he, I guess he has knee issues that are going to, I think, of arthritis conditions that are forcing him to leave the game. But I believe that they will all stay on scholarship, just not count towards the 85 scholarship limit.
Yeah, as of today, before this started, Ohio State had room for 24 players in this class. That's based on the attrition and seniors who left the team. And then going into today, Urban Meyer said that, Devin Bogard, like you mentioned, he has 3 torn ACLs in 3 years at Ohio State. That's destroyed his career. His career is completely done. The other 2 that you mentioned are most likely done. They haven't made a final decision on those 2, but those 2 are definitely candidates. And then there's 2 other guys, freshmen who haven't even had a chance to really play yet. Dylan Thompson, who broke his kneecap before the season started, and Kyle Berger, who had 2 years back-to-back where he's torn an ACL. So, I mean, and those are just the guys for injuries who may not be able to play ever again. There's always your normal attrition of guys leaving who want more playing time or who get in trouble. So, Ohio State just needs to be at 85 by August 1st. They're not cheating the system. They're using the system to their advantage, and that's something I've always thought that Ohio State needed to do, as well as the Big Ten.
I agree. I have to admit that I think, Jeremiah, you were 4 for 4 in your crystal ball predictions as far as the last 4 members of joining the Ohio State squad.
Correct. I was, indeed. I felt like KJ Hill and Isaiah Prince were going to be a Buckeyes. I never doubted that Mike Weber and Torrance Gibson were going to choose Ohio State. A lot of times, especially with Urban Meyer as our head coach, when it gets down to it at the end of the year, before signing day is up, the spots are full. And he loves the media, and the media loves drama. And so, there's always a little bit of drama at the end of the season. Last year it was the Cleveland-Glenville trio. Were they going to go to Kentucky? Were they going to go to Ohio State? And they all signed with Ohio State. This year it was the Cass Tech duo, Josh Alibi and Mike Weber. Were they going to go to Michigan and Miami, or were they going to both go to Michigan, or were they going to go to Ohio State? They both ended up at Ohio State, as I predicted, as many thought. It was close. There's no doubt about it. Mike Weber grew up a Michigan fan. He grew up 30 minutes away from Ann Arbor. It was tough, I'm sure, for him to choose Ohio State. But he did, and Buckeye fans should be grateful for it because he's a real talent.
I believe his comments were that he was surprised that a running back named Karen was picked, so that's kind of why he went to Ohio State. Why don't you guys go ahead and pick a position group of the signed players and where you believe Ohio State did great and why?
Well, I mean, we kind of alluded. I don't want to speak for Jeremiah because I'm sure he can either agree with me. I'm always thrilled. I kind of alluded to this earlier. The offensive line is definitely when you consider the fact that, years ago when Urban Meyer took over, and the transformation of that offensive line. I mean, I can't stop gushing about the job that Ed Warner did, with 4 new starters, and the fact that, when you think about, like last year's recruiting class, just kind of, keep in mind they signed, Marcellus Jones, they signed Kyle Trout, they signed Demetrius Knox, they signed Brady Taylor, and they had Jamarco Jones. That was last year. Now this year they had 6 more players in, with Grant Schmidt, Kevin Fetter. I hope I'm pronouncing the last names correct. Matthew Burrell, Brandon Bowen, Mirko Jerkovic, and Isaiah Prince today. I mean, you're talking 11 players just at the offensive line. So, what a nice problem to have. I mean, I guess if anything, I'm trying to think which of those guys is going to play center, because I mean they're all huge. I mean, I think maybe Jerkovic or Burrell, but honestly, like Fetter's like 6'8". Those guys are natural offensive tackles. So and I think that's what Coach Meyer even alluded to. I heard earlier today that he said, you never turn down the opportunity to bring in a quality offensive lineman if you have the opportunity, which is why Isaiah Prince, with that flip that happened today, was definitely welcome news, obviously, by the coaching staff.
Jeremiah?
Yeah, for me, I want to take a look at the linebackers because although the numbers are small, they're extremely impressive. You've got Justin Hilliard. He's the number 1 player in the state of Ohio, the number 2 outside linebacker in the country, a 5-star talent from Cincinnati, whose brother signed last year to play with Iowa. He is going to be a stud at Ohio State. The second guy is Jerome Baker, another Ohio kid. He's the number 2 player in Ohio, the number 4 athlete is what he's listed as, but he will play linebacker at Ohio State, at least initially. And the third guy, who's one of my favorite guys I've ever talked to, is Nick Connor. He's from Ohio, from Dublin. He's the number 8 player in the state of Ohio. Comes in at number 215 nationally. So you got 3 guys who are in the top 250, all coming in as linebackers. That's a strong class for linebackers. So that's where Ohio State wants to be. The front 7 on the back end of the defense is going to be really impressive and has a lot of depth and a lot of talent for the next few years.
I agree with everything.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I also wanted to point out, it's amazing when you look at the players that Urban Meyer does sign. They're all athletic. They're all, lengthwise. They're big. But the impressive thing about them is they can play either side of the ball, and some of them several positions. That's something that Urban Meyer looks for in a player. He doesn't want, the greatest linebacker in the world. He wants the greatest football player in the world. And he wants a guy who can run the ball, who can catch the ball, who can tackle the ball. And a lot of these players that he recruits are guys who play extremely well on both sides of the ball at multiple positions. I wanted to point out, it's amazing when you look at the players that Urban Meyer does sign. They're all athletic. They're all, lengthwise. They're big. But the impressive thing about them is they can play either side of the ball, and some of them several positions. That's something that Urban Meyer looks for in a player. He doesn't want, the greatest linebacker in the world. He wants the greatest football player in the world. And he wants a guy who can run the ball, who can catch the ball, who can tackle the ball. And a lot of these players that he recruits are guys who play extremely well on both sides of the ball.
Okay. What's going on?
Are we on a delay? Are you there, Shannon?
Yeah, I'm here.
What's going on?
I could hear myself talking.
Yeah.
Delay or something.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm sorry. I agree with both you guys said. I especially like what they've done with the offensive line. The wall of scarlet and gray, as I like to call it. What do you think that the Buckeyes should have emphasized more?
I think I think I'm kind of like being like I'm nitpicking here, but if there was one position group that I think that if not necessarily that they did poorly, but it won't surprise me that in this next recruiting class that they really emphasize is probably interior defensive linemen. What I mean by that is they did sign, Josh Alibi. They did sign Robert Landers and Devon Hamilton. But when you think about the fact that they're losing Michael Bennett on the interior defensive line this year, and next year they're going to lose Adolphus Washington, and Tommy Shutt, and Tracy Sprinkle, and Michael Hill haven't really emerged yet. Even Coach Meyer said something to the effect of the backup defensive line has to start producing. You have to kind of start playing up to Ohio State standards. So again, the reason why I'm kind of hemming and hawing on it is you're talking about a top 10 recruiting class. I think it's kind of like you're really looking for flaws that aren't necessarily there. But that would be I don't want to call it a big concern, but that would be like it would have been nice if they could have landed the Beckner kid that ultimately went to Missouri, or that that's just kind of just my opinion. I'm not sure if Jeremiah has a different one.
No, I completely agree. They're definitely going to have to be searching for top talent at defensive tackle next year. These guys are project players that they got this year for defensive tackles. They're not generally the guys that Ohio State or Urban Meyer would say are going to play the first year. They're definitely not, in my opinion, going to play the first year. So they're going to have to find some real experience. I think they did a lot better on the defensive end side, which they always do. It's kind of like what you said about not having any centers or guards for the offensive line. He recruits a lot of tackles, and then hopefully they'll be able to play guards or center. So that, and that's something that he's going to have to focus on for this 2016 class, which is already off to a banner start.
Who do you guys think is going to be have the most impact or the fastest impact possibly out of this class?
Well, I think I really respect when Coach Meyer says, if you're, don't come to Ohio State. If you're looking to redshirt, go somewhere else. He makes it abundantly clear that there are going to be players that, that he wants guys ready to come in and compete. Somebody that Jeremiah mentioned that I think is a strong candidate to play just because he's already on campus, and I'm thinking from the special team side of things, is Nick Connor. I'm thinking from the idea that on kick coverage, on special teams, that's the fastest way to get on the field, and Nick Connor seems like a logical candidate. I guess if I had to pick a sleeper candidate, and I might be kind of going out on a limb here, I'm going to say Rashad Berry, who was signed as a tight end out of Lorraine. The reason why is, at tight end, again, when you're losing Jeff Hireman to graduation, next year Nick Vanette is a senior. They've got Marcus Baugh, but we all know that Marcus Baugh has had some issues staying on the right path in the eyes of the coaching staff. So it wouldn't surprise me if Rashad Berry gets an opportunity to make a mark at tight end. But like a position like running back, like Michael Weber could possibly come in and steal some carries, to kind of give Ezekiel Elliott and Curtis Samuel a break. So those are three off the top of my head.
Yeah, for me, I look at the offensive line. If there's some talent on the offensive line, but with as much talent as we already have at offensive line, I don't see any of those guys playing very early. You do look at the four guys who are already on campus, who are going to have a good 6 months ahead of the other ones. You got, like you said, Nick Connor, Jamel Dean, Grant Schmidt, and my sleeper pick for the first player to be able to make some real positive plays is Sean Parnell. He's from Minnesota. He's 6'4", about 260 pounds. He's coming in as a defensive end, but if he puts on a little bit of weight between now and the beginning of the season, he could easily move into the interior line of the defensive line and play some defensive tackle. He's a highly recruited. He's top 100 player. So he's somebody who you have to keep an eye on because he will be at Ohio State he is there already, so that's going to help him a lot. You look at a guy like Torrance Gibson, who is probably the most talented athlete in this class. He from top to bottom, he has a lot of gifts and talents. He wants to play quarterback, and he will play quarterback. You may see him in a few wildcat situations, just to see what kind of a player he can be early in the season against some of the lesser teams. And probably my last pick is Draymond Jones, a guy who, at the beginning of this process, had little to no name recognition, and over a process of the last few months, went from being unranked to a top 100 player in the country. He plays defensive end. He's 6'3", 266. He played in the Army Bowl game and was dominant against some of the best players in the country. So it's interesting to see how well he can handle that defensive end as well.
I have to agree with Chip. I'm just as far as the Rashad Berry, living in Lorain County myself, and growing up in that area, got him kind of pulling for the former Lorain High Titan. What are some things that you guys, one aspect of National Signing Day, you could change? What would it be?
Well, this is just my opinion. I think I really liked and it wasn't discussed today, but something that former Nebraska head coach and current Youngstown State head coach Bo Pelini said, and that is the idea of allowing players to, if a scholarship is extended, to allow a player to sign it. I think that would be a good thing, and my rationale on that is not so much with Ohio State, but a couple days ago, I'm not sure if either of you or any of our audience happened to see it. Bobby Petrino revoked a scholarship offer that he had extended to a young man who had verbally committed for 8 or 9 months, literally the day or two before National Signing Day. And I just think if you're going to offer a scholarship and the young man wants to sign it, I think that would be a good thing. There's obviously a lot of talk about an early signing period similar to what they have in college basketball. I just think, I guess call me old-fashioned, but I just think your word is your bond. That you should be able to, if somebody offers you a scholarship, I think you should be able to accept it and have that stress and all that kind of that weight taken off. That would be the one thing I would change.
For me, I think, I agree with some of the things that Chip said there. I'm not sure about the early signing period. A lot of kids, and these are kids, make decisions in situations where they show up at a school that, wines and dines them for a weekend. They fall in love with it. They decide they want to go there. They get back home and start talking, down the road a couple weeks, and they start talking to another school. They fall in love with that school. You've got to give these kids as much time and the ability to make a decision. But if they do have an early signing period, I just hope they make it at least allowable for them to get out of it for some reason, one way or another, because the coaches get to get out of situations as much as they want to. But for me, the one thing that I'd like to see changed on National Signing Day, I guess it would be that more kids wouldn't necessarily sign on National Signing Day. You see all these kids wait because they want to make a splash, and then they end up being one of 500 kids who waited and wanted to make a big splash. Commit when you can, and don't hold out and hope for that you're going to get that 15 minutes of fame. So that's my one complaint about National Signing Day.
Yeah, when it comes to and I understand the kids want to have fun. I mean, it's their chance to like you said, it's kind of, to their moment in the spotlight to enjoy it. Like I remember years ago, Isaiah Crowell, when he signed with Georgia, he had a bulldog puppy, up on stage with him, and I can't remember who. I think it's Iman Marshall is a defensive back that signed with USC, and he had like a music video or something like that. I understand that they like to do it, but it's just, I'm not saying that they're all like this, but by and large, the players that usually, just maybe I'm mistaken, the players that usually just kind of commit and don't make a big deal out of it are the ones that usually wind up fine, and the ones that kind of make this drawn out process, and try and make like a big stage about it, are the ones that usually, I don't want to say that they don't wind up as anything, but their careers, sometimes people look back on it with some kind of disappointment, because I think that the hype overshadowed the substance. And that's just, when it comes to National Signing Day.
Yeah, you're dead on about that. You do see that a lot with the kids who make a big spectacle out of their recruitment. You don't see that a lot from Urban Meyer recruits, but you do see it a few times, and the few times that you have seen it, those guys have not panned out as they had hoped for. That's for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say something about that, because when you call something like that the Terrell Pryor effect, basically.
Yeah.
Listen, these kids deserve every bit of fame that they can get out of this. They deserve to be able to do whatever they want to do. I fully believe that, because this could be their greatest moment in their lives, And as sad as that may be for them, it could be. So let them live it up. Let them do what they want. But I just think some of these kids, especially the lower-ranked kids who wait, get overshadowed because, everybody wants to know where the 5-star's going, where the 4-star's going, where the Ohio State recruit's going. Well, meanwhile, I'm sure there was Boston College kids who wanted to wait until today to say who they were going to, and, nobody cared. So.
Well, and that brings up a good point. Today's, National Signing Day, but it's not the only day that the recruits have that they have to sign today in order to join a certain school.
Now, they have a couple weeks that I think till the beginning of April or something like that. I think it's beginning of spring ball or something like that, where they have to sign a national letter of intent. And it's complicated, but it's one of the things that they need to do to get their scholarship. So.
Right.
Yeah. You referenced the Terrell Pryor effect. The fact that if memory serves, he actually had an announcement to say that he wasn't making an announcement when on his National Signing Day, and then it was this drawn out thing, and look what ultimately happened. He helped to bring down the previous coaching regime. He had that sense of entitlement, and I completely understand that. This is arguably like the most important decision that these young men are making, because their choice of school, regardless of how their football careers turn out, this has a major impact on the direction that their life can possibly take. But when you think about Terrell Pryor, like the spectacle that was, and how it ultimately wound up, that's where I kind of, I'm just, give me the guy like an AJ Hawk, or like looking at this recruiting class, for example, like Jamel Dean. I don't remember any big hoopla. Like he committed, based on my notes, like he committed like 2 years ago. So he's a guy that like little to no fanfare, and he's enrolled at Ohio State, and hopefully working his way up in the eyes of the coaching staff in the depth chart.
Absolutely.
No, I agree that, these kids, they deserve their, moment to shine and everything like that. And the reason, like I said, the Terrell Pryor thing is what Chip alluded to with the announcement that he wasn't making an announcement. And it just, and it's some of those guys, and not all, but it seems like a lot of them, it's all about the me effect, and then they carry that on to college, and like Chip said, the sense of entitlement and everything. Speaking of rankings and stars and everything like that, how important do you guys actually think it is?
I think there's a certain degree of importance, and what I mean by that is, like, again, I don't really stress if somebody says, and I'm just throwing this out there. I have no idea. Like if 247 Sports says that player A is a 5-star and Scout or Rivals says that this guy's a 4-star, I don't, that doesn't really, it doesn't really bother me as much as I kind of look at it like I have complete and absolute faith and trust in Urban Meyer and the coaching staff and Mark Pantoni, who is the director of player personnel or development or whatever it might, I'm not sure what his official title is. They've done their homework. A case in point was, Darren Lee was not highly hyped, was not, it was, he earned his scholarship offer at Ohio State's football camp by, performing well in the eyes of the coaching staff. So I don't really get too worked up over, like how many stars this guy has. I'm more concerned about once you get that player signed, like as of today, or in the case of the 4 players that are already there, how well are you developing them? And that's where I think like when you think about some of the other schools that have had highly rated recruits, well, why isn't that translating on the football field? If you're having these highly ranked recruiting classes, it should be winding up with victories on the football field. And I think that's the great thing Ohio State fans can take pleasure in, is that you've got a very capable head coach who emphasizes the importance of recruiting but also player development.
No, I agree with Chip a lot. I always say this. Recruiting rankings do not mean a thing for individual players. You can have 5-stars who turn out to be complete busts. You can have unranked players who turn out to be the greatest football players in the world. Where recruiting rankings do matter is when you look at the team as a whole. Since 1998, every team that's won the national championship has had a top 10 recruiting class in 3 of the 4 years previous to winning the national championship. It matters. Recruiting rankings matter. It matters as a team. You cannot have a team full of 2 and 3 stars and help to develop all of them into outstanding players. You have to have a good balance of highly recruited recruits, 5 stars, high 4 stars. You have to mix in those 2 and 3 stars who are super hungry and want to compete and beat out those 4 and 5 stars who are willing to, play the role player, do the things. You do need that player development that coaches do provide. But recruiting rankings do matter, and anybody who tells you that they don't is just saying that because they don't have the recruiting rankings that they want. Because when you look at the bottom line, if you want to win national championships, if that's the ultimate goal of your program, which it isn't for everybody, but it is for a school like Ohio State, then you have to have top 10 classes every year. You cannot afford to have a class ranked in the 30s, a class ranked in the 40s. It'll come back to bite you by the time those kids are seniors. When you look at a class, half the class and every one of them will not end up being seniors at the school. It's just a matter of fact. You lose them for injuries, for playing time, for being kicked out for dumb reasons. So you rely on those seniors to provide senior leadership every year so that you can make the younger players play good enough to where you'll be able to win a national championship. And that's what happened this year. The team wasn't full of senior stars, but it was full of senior players who led the team and helped those younger players realize what they needed to do to help win the championship. And for that, the recruiting rankings are highly important.
Just a quick comment to that is, as it relates to the recruiting rankings, like Ohio State, the fact that they've had highly rated classes in the past, I think, when you look at and you compare it and contrast it to Michigan State, for example, now granted they actually have a few players coming in that are highly ranked, like they have a running back out of the Columbus area named L.J. Scott that Ohio State offered, but Scott stuck with his Michigan State commitment. He signed up. I think he's like a 4-star or 5-star or whatever. But Michigan State they are, to Jeremiah's point, they are kind of the I don't want to say the exception to the rule, but like you're kind of seeing the limitations of, yes, like they have like a lot of 2- and 3-star guys, and they're developing them well. However, without any like true difference maker superstar talent, they might have reached their ceiling in terms of what they're able to do. I'm not saying that I don't want to offend any Michigan State fans who might be listening. I'm not saying that they won't ever contend for the national championship, but I agree with Jeremiah that I think it's that much more difficult when you're not getting the true difference makers that a lot of the elite programs like Ohio State, like Alabama, like USC have been signing year in and year out.
Yeah, just to further, just because you get top recruiting classes, though, doesn't mean that you're automatically going to win a national championship. I'm just saying that if you don't get top recruiting classes, it will preclude you from winning a national championship. It's just a scientific fact at this point. At least since the BCS system came into effect, you have to have top recruiting classes to compete at the highest. Yeah. You have to have Oregon and Michigan State who will put in a lot of good years and win a lot of games. If that's okay with you as a program, then so be it. That should be what you want. Mark D'Antonio is a great developer of talent. Kirk Ferentz is a great developer of talent. Jerry Kill is a great developer of talent. They're going to win games. Kirk Ferentz has not done as well lately, but that's what he's always been known as. He didn't recruit well. He never has, but he's never won a national championship. And that's something that Urban Meyer always does. He recruits well, he develops well, and he runs a program well, and that's why he wins national championships. So, yes, recruiting rankings do matter.
Yeah, well, Jerry Kill got Coach of the Year, Big Ten Coach of the Year, and Urban Meyer doesn't have one of those.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will somehow console myself with
winning a national championship.
Yeah, winning the national championship.
I agree. I agree. I'll go with Phil Steele announcing that Urban Meyer's Coach of the Year over a bunch of, I hate to say it because nobody wants to say who did the voting and everything, but a bunch of hacks and I'm not taking anything away from Jerry Kill, but what Urban Meyer did, especially in the Big Ten, with the third-string quarterback and second-string quarterback and all that hoopla and the rebuilding of a new line, not to win Coach of the Year, that's, we can beat that thing to death.
Well,
all right, that's
Coach Meyer even alluded to, I just a quick comment was when Torrance Gibson was kind of wavering on his commitment. Coach Meyer basically said, don't punish us for having done well at the quarterback position. The fact that Braxton Miller's, nobody knows what's going to happen at this point, with his shoulder, and the fact that JT Barrett emerged, the fact that Cardale had such a tremendous end of the season, that embarrassment of riches. If anything, I think what Coach Meyer was trying to tell Torrance Gibson and Joey Burrow is, hey, we can develop you. We might be losing 2 of these guys next year. We need to have quarterback depth. So it's again, I'd rather have too much talent than not enough of it. And that's the great thing about this recruiting class is they definitely, not that they were hurting in any areas, obviously, but the fact that they, the rich get richer. It's a great problem to have if you're an Ohio State fan after today.
I agree. That's pretty much going to be, we'll wrap up the show here in a sec. I just came across some breaking news that's not football related, but basketball related, since Ohio State's getting ready to tip off against Purdue. I see that Mark Living has been suspended for at least 1 game.
He's definitely in Thad Matta's doghouse. So.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what happened. All I've seen so far is that he's lost the right to wear the scarlet and gray.
Temporarily.
Yes. Temporarily, yes. Temporarily.
He lost his starting position a few weeks ago, and a few games ago, and that can do things to a guy. he doesn't seem like a very emotional guy, but he must have done something probably wrong in the
Yeah, I'm a
practice.
little nervous myself on that, especially going against, 2 7-footers tonight, but we'll leave that at that. Anything you guys want to add before we take off here tonight?
Just a big shout out of appreciation to Coach Meyer and the entire coaching staff and Mark Pantoni for a job well done. With recruiting, obviously, this is a big day for fans such as ourselves. But the coaches and Mark Pantoni, they're the ones that work the long hours. Coach Meyer was up all hours of the night last night trying to keep players in the fold like Mike Weber. So obviously there's a tremendous amount of appreciation for all of the hard work that is put in by the staff to get talented players to keep coming to Columbus to wear the scarlet and gray.
Yeah, I want to reiterate that. I said it today on Twitter. Recruiting is a very difficult thing. It's 365 days a year. It's long. It's arduous. You're dealing with sometimes prima donnas and entitled kids. Sometimes kids who have no parental figures in their lives. It's a difficult thing to do to try to help mold and shape these young men into real men. And for that, I'm grateful for this staff. They do a wonderful job. I'm always proud to be a Buckeye, but especially on a day like today where they really stood out and made a name for Ohio State. So I just want to leave it at that. I hope that the fans enjoy what the staff is doing for them. They seem to be, it looks like there's a lot of recruiting fans out there who weren't around recruiting, 10 or 15 years ago when there was just a few of us reading newspapers and magazines hoping to get a little bit of information about a recruit that we never heard of before. So it's always fun to get into recruiting and to talk to people about it and try to, just develop some basic knowledge about how recruiting works. So I love it. I enjoy it a lot, and I'm grateful for it. So
I echo the sentiments that both of you just said. I couldn't put it any better myself. I'd like to thank everybody who has come and visited our website and hopefully listening to our podcast. You guys have really showed up in droves, and it's awesome to see. Chip, where can they find you at and get a hold of you if they want to talk to you outside of the...
I can always be reached at Chip Minnick, MINNICH, via Twitter. Look for some further recruiting, a teaser of an article that will be this coming Friday on the website for Men of the Scarlet and Gray. Look at the different position groups. Look forward to as much interaction with anyone and everyone that is a fan of the website. Let me know what you think about the recruiting class. Let me know what you think about the article, and let me know what you think about the podcast as well.
What about you, Jeremiah?
You can find me at, like you said, Sir MotSaG on Twitter, SYR MotSaG, MOTSGG. If you are not a fan of trolling, of stats, of recruiting in Ohio State, please don't follow me. Save yourself a lot of time and trouble. I annoy pretty much everybody. Even the people who like me hate me most of the time. If you don't enjoy that kind of stuff, I understand. I truly do. Sometimes I don't even like myself, so I don't talk to myself. I don't read what I write. I just write it what I think, and it just comes out. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but it's always entertaining.
And I'm the controversial one.
Absolutely.
If you can reach me at SMSOMMERS84 on Twitter. I love interacting with Buckeye fans, non-Buckeye fans. Love talking college sports, as Chip and Jeremiah also do. So, in closing, now it's, as Bill Belichick would say, now we're on to 2016 class.
Yep. Never stops.
Never does. So thanks for stopping by and listening to us. And remember, we're going to leave with our favorite song.
Go Bucks.
Go Bucks.
Go Buckeyes.